I'd just finished my second cup of coffee when Greg Hartley called me upstairs. There was a weird energy in the hallway. Stiff backs, a couple of people avoiding my eyes. I figured maybe the board had pushed another dumb, cost-cutting plan. But the second I stepped into the glass conference room, I knew it wasn't that. Greg was already seated at the head of the table. His sleeves rolled up like always, pretending he was still a scrappy startup guy instead of a multimillionaire with season tickets and a Tesla Plaid parked outside. My name's Dave Renner. I'm 54. I live in Indianapolis, and until 8:42 that Monday morning, I was the VP of operations at Stratacore Diagnostics. 17 years. That's how long I gave that company. Helped build it from a dozen people packed into a strip mall unit to a national player with over 2,000 employees. That room we were in, I helped design it during the last renovation, picked the glass table myself, had the power outlets embedded in the floor so we could run full ops reviews without tripping over cords. Now, I was sitting there, like a guy on trial. Greg cleared his throat. We've decided to move in a new direction. 7 words. That was it. No handshake. No thank you. Not even a damn question. I looked around the room. 7 execs I'd worked side by side with for years. Guys I'd pulled through bad audits, divorces, layoffs. One of them I'd even helped pay rent for during the 2008 crash. Not one of them said a word. Nobody met my eyes. Just stared down at their notes or pretended their coffee was fascinating. All except Greg. He looked straight at me. No pity, no tension. Honestly, he looked pleased. Quick note. Before we go further, tell us which country or city you're watching from. That's when he dropped the rest of it. They were replacing me with Kyle Benson, his 32-year-old son-in-law. I blinked. Kyle? The guy who asked me last week what a reagent was? Greg didn't even flinch. He'll bring a fresh perspective. Fresh? Kyle hadn't even finished onboarding when I was finalizing our last 3 vendor contracts. The guy once tried to use a spreadsheet to email 400 hospital contacts. Anything else I should know? I asked, standing up. Greg leaned back in the chair like he'd won something. HR will process your transition paperwork. That's what they were calling it, a transition, like I was being gently walked off stage. I grabbed the folder I'd brought and walked out without another word. Let them sit there and choke on their silence. I walked back through the operations floor like a ghost in my own house. Nobody said a damn word. A few people nodded, tight, awkward, eyes darting away. Most didn't even look up. It was quiet, that weird kind of silence where people are holding their breath so they don't get pulled into the blast zone. My office door was still cracked open. Same nameplate, same frame photo on the shelf. Our original team. 12 people, all smiling like we knew what we were doing. Only 2 of us were still at the company. Me and HR. I sat down in my chair. That creak in the left wheel? Still there. I'd meant to fix it last quarter, but the Clarion rollout had eaten my life. I looked around once, then started packing. The photo came down first, then the chair pillow I'd had for over a decade. One of those foam ones with the mesh backing. Beat to hell, but molded perfectly to my back. Last was the mug my niece gave me 6 Christmases ago. Don't even ask until coffee. One drawer had a stash of granola bars I'd forgotten about. Another had the thank you notes I'd saved over the years. Maybe 30 of them. People I'd mentored, promoted, talked off ledges. I didn't take those. Left them in the drawer. Let Kyle figure out who wrote them. If he could even recognize the handwriting. Then Jill poked her head in. Her eyes were red. She'd definitely been crying. They already asked me to start working with Kyle, she said, voice small. I nodded. Take it. She stepped in and closed the door. Dave, I said take it. I cut her off. You've got twins in college. This place isn't worth making a scene over. She looked down, guilt written all over her face. I didn't blame her. This was how these things went. Loyalty only counted until the next meeting. They're saying you botched the Clarion rollout, she whispered. I actually laughed. Is that what they're going with? She nodded slowly. They said Kyle would be doing an audit. He wants access to your files. Then he can file a written request through IT, I said. Tell him that. Proper channels. Jill gave me this look like she was both grateful and about to cry again. He's not ready for this. No kidding. She glanced toward the hallway. Do you want me to help carry anything out? I shook my head. Just make sure he doesn't screw up the Q3 forecasts. They're still buried under ops/internal/legacy systems. He won't think to look there. She cracked a weak smile. He asked me today what the difference was between a purchase order and a vendor agreement. That tracks? I grabbed my box, not too heavy, just weird how 17 years of blood and sweat fit into a cardboard cube. As I walked out, I passed by the break room. Kyle was in there, sipping a Red Bull and talking too loud on speakerphone. He didn't even look up. Jill trailed behind me for a few steps, then stopped. Dave, I turned. You deserve better. I didn't answer, just kept walking. One step, then the next. Past finance, past HR, down the stairs, through the lobby, out the front doors. Didn't look back. I sat in my car with the box on the passenger seat, hands frozen on the steering wheel. Inside was my whole career in coffee mugs, backup batteries, and a beat-up folder of SOPs. I hadn't digitized yet. I stared at it like it was going to tell me what to do next. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost let it go. Didn't want to talk to anyone. Didn't owe anyone anything. But something, instinct maybe, made me swipe. Dave Renner? Yeah. This is Lena Ortega, CEO of Provia Labs. I blinked, sat up straighter without realizing it. The competition. Greg used to call her that vulture in heels. Usually after she landed another contract Stratacore had chased and lost. She was sharp, relentless, ran Provia like a warship. I heard what happened this morning, she said, voice calm, businesslike. Meet me at 3, the Barrister Lounge, downtown. That caught me off guard. You're offering me a drink? I'm offering you a lifeline. I paused, glancing at the time on the dash. It was 12:27. Why me? I asked. She didn't hesitate. Because Stratacore just handed me their backbone, and I'd be a fool not to pick it up. I sat there a second, then said, I'm not wearing a suit. You won't need one. She hung up. I sat there another 10 minutes, brains spinning. I'd just been fired. Hours ago. Now the CEO of our biggest competitor wanted a face-to-face. Could be a setup, could be a power move, or maybe she saw what Greg never did. Either way, I didn't know Stratacore a damn thing. Not anymore. I put the car in drive and headed home to swap the box for my laptop. Then I changed shirts and drove downtown. The Barrister Lounge was one of those upscale old money joints. Dark leather booths, gold fixtures, the kind of place where hedge fund guys took meetings over $18 cocktails. I'd been there once years ago for a vendor dinner, never liked it. Lena was already there when I walked in, back corner booth sipping black tea, not a drink in sight. She looked up and stood just enough to shake my hand. Firm grip, calm eyes, no nonsense. Dave, she said, thanks for coming. I was curious. No, you weren't. You were pissed. That's good. Anger gets results. I slid into the booth across from her. You always make same-day recruiting calls? Only when the talent just got kicked out the front door. She leaned in slightly. Let's not pretend. You built Stratacore's ops, their supply chain, their hospital pipeline, their documentation systems. Kyle Benson doesn't know a damn thing about regulatory compliance or lab distribution. They didn't just cut loose an executive. They cut their engine. I didn't respond, just waited. She smiled. So here's the deal. I want you with Provia, not as some mid-level hire, partner level. You call shots. You build your team. No micromanaging. My stomach nodded. You do realize I've got a non-compete. Her smile widened. Already had my lawyers look. You can't work for us directly, but you can consult as an independent contractor. No poaching, no violations, clean, legal, smart. I ran a hand down my face. Feels fast? It is. But Stratacore moved first. We're just responding. I looked at her again. She wasn't bluffing. This wasn't a sympathy play. This was business. And maybe payback. She sipped her tea, calm as ever. So, you in? I didn't give her a yes, but I didn't walk away either. I pulled into the Stratacore lot around 9:30 that night. Didn't even know why. Habit, I guess. The building still had lights on. Probably Kyle in there, squinting at spreadsheets he didn't understand, trying to decode the operation system I'd built over nearly 2 decades. I didn't go inside, just sat there in the dark, engine off, window cracked, crickets outside, that faint hum of rooftop, HVAC, units in the background. Then my phone rang. Unknown number again. I stared at it for a beat, then answered. "Dave," the voice said, warm and professional. "Dr. Patel here, Director of Procurement, Apex Medical Systems." That snapped me upright. "Evening, Doctor." "Patel, Greg Hartley called earlier," he said. "Wanted to reassure us everything would run smoothly. Said his son-in-law was taking over your responsibilities." I didn't say a word. Patel exhaled through his nose. "We weren't reassured." There was a pause, not long, but intentional. "We're reviewing other vendors," he said, "possibly bringing in an independent consultant to help evaluate. You interested?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. We both knew what that meant. "Good night, Mr. Renner," he said. Then he hung up. I stared at the screen for a few seconds after the call ended. Then I put the car in gear and drove home. The next morning, I filed the paperwork for Renerops Consulting, LLC. No mission statement, no slick branding. Just a line in the registration form. Vendor Advisory Services for Healthcare Operations Systems. Simple. Quiet. Dangerous. I didn't advertise. Didn't cold call. Didn't even post a launch announcement on LinkedIn. Didn't need to. By the end of the week, 3 more health systems reached out. People I'd worked with for years. Procurement directors, system administrators, lab managers. They all said the same thing. "We're reviewing our options." I took every call, gave them my honest opinion, didn't sell anything, just listened, analyzed, and laid out who they should actually be working with, and why Stratacore was now a liability. I never once mentioned Greg, never badmouthed Kyle, didn't have to. The holes showed themselves. One system had already missed 2 deliverables since my exit. Another said invoices were bouncing back due to mismatched routing protocols. A mistake Kyle would have caught if he'd understood vendor tiers. I didn't rub it in. I just offered solutions. I charged a fair rate, billed clean, sent recaps same day. Everything Stratacore had gotten sloppy about. Within 2 weeks, I had 5 active clients, all consulting, all legal. Every one of them slowly moving business away from Stratacore. It wasn't revenge, it was just cleaning up the mess. I kept my head down, worked late, answered emails fast, stayed off the radar. Lena checked in once. Short call, all business. "You're doing good work," she said. "Keep going." Kyle, from what I heard, was struggling. He'd emailed Jill 3 times in one day asking how to find internal lab spec sheets. She told him they were on the shared drive under ops/internal/legacy systems. Exactly where I said they'd be. He still couldn't find them. Not my problem. I wasn't looking backward anymore. I was building something sharper, quieter. And the industry was starting to notice. 2 weeks later, I was elbow deep in a vendor risk audit for a hospital in Dayton when my phone buzzed. "Jill, Kyle can't find the Clarion logs." Greg furious. I actually laughed. I didn't text back. Didn't need to. They'd made their choice. Now they could live with it. 3 days after that, I got an email from Dr. Patel's assistant. Apex had finalized their vendor evaluation. Stratacore didn't make the shortlist. A week later, a black car pulled up in front of my house. Driver handed me a small box, Glenlivet 21 year, with a card that said, "For clarity, loyalty, and competence. R. Patel." That bottle hit harder than any job title ever did. Then came the real blow. Lena had hinted at something during our first meeting, said Greg wanted me out so I wouldn't get in the way. I hadn't known what she meant at the time. Now I did. Stratacore had been trying to push through an acquisition of Genexus Biologics, a mid-tier diagnostics firm with promising tech and a messy paper trail. I'd blocked it twice last year due to compliance gaps. One of their subsidiaries was flagged in a federal review for mislabeling chemical shipments. Nothing sexy, but the kind of thing that could crater a merger post-signature. Turns out, Greg had gone ahead with it anyway, quietly. Slipped it through right after I was gone. The deal blew up mid-due diligence. Provia's legal team leaked the compliance failures to a couple financial journalists. Article hit Bloomberg on a Thursday morning. By Friday afternoon, Stratacore's stock had dropped 18%. Investors panicked. Calls flooded in. Board members started distancing themselves. Lena didn't gloat. She just sent me the link with a one-line email. Told you they'd trip over their own arrogance. By the end of the month, Stratacore was in full spin mode. Greg tried to pin the failure on Genexus. Analysts weren't buying it. Turns out, when you skip proper review and fire the one guy who understands the risks, the story doesn't hold. I started getting pings from old colleagues, quiet ones, the kind people send after midnight when they're drinking and thinking too much. This place is a mess without you. Kyle's rewriting SOPs he doesn't even understand. Greg is unraveling. I didn't respond to any of them. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't celebrating. I was busy. Renerops had picked up its 8th client. I was working 10-hour days again. Not because I had to, but because it felt good to build. Clean systems, better workflows, honest pricing. Meanwhile, Stratacore was bleeding. Apex was gone. Northwest Diagnostic Labs followed. Then Greenville General. All big accounts. All clients I'd worked with personally for years. And I hadn't lifted a single finger against them. It turns out, when you quietly remove the guy who holds the blueprint, the building starts to crack. And that crack, it wasn't slowing down. It was turning into collapse. It was late. Almost 10. I was wrapping up some final revisions on a vendor scorecard for a hospital in Phoenix when my phone lit up. Greg Hartley. I stared at the name for a second, then answered without saying anything. Dave, he said, voice syrupy warm. How are you? Busy, I figured. Listen, I won't waste your time. We might have acted too quickly a few weeks back. There's an opportunity I think you'll want to hear. I leaned back in my chair. To bring me back. He laughed, nervous, fake. Well, not full-time, maybe in an advisory capacity, short-term, just to stabilize things. The team could really use your guidance, I finished. There was a long pause on his end. I could picture him sitting in that overpriced home office, probably sweating through a quarter zip, clutching whatever bourbon he thought made him seem important. I almost laughed. Greg, I said, it's not about the money. Then what do you want? I let that hang in the air. Then I answered, slow and clear. I want you to understand what it costs to replace 17 years of institutional knowledge with your son-in-law's LinkedIn profile. He didn't like that. His voice tightened. We were trying to modernize. Bring in new ideas. No, I said. You were trying to consolidate power. You wanted a puppet in my seat. That's not fair. You taught me everything I know about playing the corporate game, I said. And now, you're losing at it. He got defensive, started rambling about board pressure, external market conditions, shifting client expectations. I just let him talk. I knew the tone. It was the sound of a man realizing the ground under him wasn't solid anymore. He tried one last pitch. Look, you come back as a consultant. Maybe we clean up the Apex situation, stabilize Genexus, and then we figure out a longer path forward. You'd be well compensated. I'm sure I would, I said, but I'm already building something better. Silence, then flatly, you're working with Ortega. She respects competence. You should try it sometime. Another pause. You always thought you were smarter than everyone else. No, I said. I just paid attention. I ended the call. Didn't yell, didn't gloat, just hung up and went back to work. The following Friday, I got a call from Jill. You sitting down? I'm in a chair. Greg's out. Board vote was unanimous. Kyle's gone too. Some VP from legal is acting CEO for now. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. What happened? Apex pulled their data from the system. Greenville terminated their contract. Then someone leaked internal emails about the Genexus disaster. Investors flipped. Let me guess, I said. Greg blamed everyone but himself. He threw Kyle under the bus. Kyle tried to throw it back. It got ugly. Not my circus, I said. Not anymore, Jill replied. I hung up and poured myself 2 fingers of the Glenlivet from Patel. No toasts, no celebrations. Just a quiet moment. Greg always thought he was untouchable. That charm could cover incompetence. That titles beat talent. Turns out, investors care about results. Turns out, The guy you fired might be the only one who ever understood how the engine ran. And when you cut him loose, well, eventually the machine grinds to a stop. Monday morning, I walked into Provia's offices for the first time. No one handed me a badge, no onboarding checklist. Lena just nodded from her office and kept working. That was the entire welcome, and it was perfect. She gave me full autonomy, no hand-holding, no second-guessing. I wasn't there to fill a seat. I was there to build. So I started assembling a team, quietly, carefully, not recruiters, not Ivy League resumes. I made calls. People Stratacore had overlooked for years. Smart analysts stuck under bad managers. Coordinators who knew workflows inside and out, but never got promoted. I brought them in one by one, gave them clean contracts, real salaries, clear expectations. No one had to ask permission to do their job. First win came fast. One of the Midwest systems Stratacore had been courting for years signed with us in 10 days. Then another followed. Then 2 more. We didn't promise the moon. We just delivered what we said we would. On time. No jargon, no fake urgency. That's all it took. By the end of month 2, we had 4 systems locked in. I ran ops, handled contracts, built out the vendor tools myself. Lena stayed out of the way, except for approvals and legal sign-offs. Then Jill called. "You still hiring?" I didn't even hesitate. Always. She started the next Monday. Walked into the office with that same tight smile I remembered from the early days at Stratacore. Only now, there was something else behind it, like she could finally exhale. "Feels weird not bracing for chaos," she said during her first week. "Get used to it," I told her. 3 weeks later, Apex came through. They signed an exclusive 3-year deal with my division. $42 million. No middlemen, no back and forth. Just a clean negotiation between people who trusted each other. Dr. Patel sent a handwritten note. "We'd follow you again in a heartbeat." That night, Lena took the team out for steaks and scotch. No speeches, no photos. Just a quiet table in a corner booth while we passed around the contract binder like it was a championship ring. Jill raised her glass halfway through dinner. "To doing it right," she said. Finally. We all drank to that. This wasn't revenge. I didn't need revenge. This was business done the way it should have been all along, with people who gave a damn, systems that made sense, and leadership that stayed out of its own way. Stratacore had chased these same clients for years, using bloated decks, overpriced bids, and Kyle's generic email templates. We won them in 2 months because we showed up, listened, and didn't talk down to people. I wasn't trying to be flashy. I didn't care about titles or press coverage. But it felt good to watch a better machine run. No drama, no politics, just work that mattered. And for the first time in a long time, I actually looked forward to Mondays again. I was reviewing a proposal for a Southern California network when the email popped in. Subject line, "Let's talk." It was from Stratacore's interim CEO, a finance guy named Rittenhouse. One of those boardroom ghosts who never talked unless the stock price dipped. The message was short. Would you consider returning in a strategic role? Flexible scope, executive-level input, competitive compensation. We'd value your insight. I stared at it for a few seconds, then clicked mark as unread and moved on. Didn't even feel tempted. 3 hours later, Lena walked into my office with a check in one hand and a fresh title in the other. "Quarterly bonus," she said, dropping the envelope on my desk. "And congrats. You're now EVP of Strategy and Partnerships. Don't act like it changes anything. You're already doing the job." I opened the envelope. The number made my eyebrows go up. You serious?" I asked. "You built a division that's outpacing projections by 38%, she said. "Of course I'm serious." She turned to leave, then looked back. "Rittenhouse emailed you yet?" I just smirked. That's what I thought. The title didn't matter. What mattered was the work. We'd built something efficient, lean, and respected. Clients weren't just staying, they were sending others. Word of mouth was doing more than any marketing campaign ever could. Lena let me lead. She didn't hover, didn't micromanage, didn't pull power plays. She treated me like someone who knew what they were doing. Stratacore had treated me like a cog, a disposable piece of machinery. That difference was everything. One afternoon, Jill stuck her head in my office. "You're gonna love this," she said. "Guess what Kyle's doing now?" I leaned back. "What?" "Pivoting to real estate." I barked out a laugh. "Of course he is. His LinkedIn says he's found a new passion for connecting people with meaningful spaces. Translation, no one in the industry will touch him." She nodded. "Pretty much." I pulled up his page later, just for fun. Sure enough, the lab systems expert was now selling starter homes in the suburbs. Not mad about it, just amused. That's the thing about being underestimated. People forget how much weight you were actually carrying until it's gone. They think they're cutting fat. Turns out, they're pulling out the spine. Stratacore hadn't collapsed overnight. It just started leaking. Clients, credibility, direction, until it finally sank under its own arrogance. And I hadn't pushed it. I just walked away. The job offers I used to dream about when I was grinding through 17-hour days, they were arriving now. Direct lines, high six-figure packages, equity, prestige. I turned them all down. Why would I leave the thing I built? Why would I leave a place where people mattered more than politics? That email from Rittenhouse? Never replied. Never even forwarded it to Lena. She didn't need to know. The answer was obvious. We weren't in the same business anymore. They were still playing catch-up. We were building the future. It's been 6 months since that Monday morning. Stratacore's stock is still down 30%. Every quarter, another analyst downgrades them. Their biggest contracts bled out one by one: Apex, Greenville, Northwest. Even a few they thought were bulletproof. Gone. And I never had to lift a finger to make it happen. No leaks, no hit jobs, no scorched earth tactics. I just left. Every day now, my team builds smarter, faster systems. We test twice, roll out clean, follow through. No bloated middle layers, no inflated timelines, just work that matters. Every week, new clients find their way to my door. They're not interested in logos anymore. They want results. They want trust. They want someone who's actually been in the room, not just pitched to it. Jill and I joke sometimes. "Should we send Greg a fruit basket?" she'll say, deadpan. I'll nod. Maybe one of those edible arrangements, a classy one. But the truth is, no one's heard from Greg since his forced resignation. Rumor is, he tried to start a leadership consultancy and couldn't land a single client. Last I saw, his LinkedIn said, exploring opportunities. I drive past the old Stratacore building once in a while, not on purpose, just habit from my old commute. The lights are mostly off now, parking lot half full. New banner out front that says "Innovating Tomorrow." They can keep the slogans. What I feel now isn't rage, it's clarity. They thought they were punishing me when they cut me loose. Like I was the problem. Like the engine would run better without the guy who built the damn thing. But all they did was free me. I'm not the VP of anything now. I don't report up. I don't chase approval. I don't explain basic concepts to guys who married into power. I build. I lead people who trust me because I've earned it. I take meetings where everyone speaks the same language. I go home tired, but it's the kind that feels earned. And if you've ever been thrown out after years of loyalty, if you've ever packed your desk while people averted their eyes, convinced you were just part of the cycle, just remember one thing. Sometimes the only thing keeping the place afloat was you.